Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. Did you see this? We're looking at church news. First Presidency announces 1 hour sacrament meeting to commemorate Palm Sunday in 2026. So this is brand new. Up until this point, we did 1 hour sacrament for Christmas. And I think more recently, Easter was added because the church has been emphasizing how Easter needs to be the most important celebration of the year. But now we're starting to include Palm Sunday. And it's really interesting for me because I've been a lifelong member of the church. Before the April 2023 General Conference, I never gave Palm Sunday a second thought or Holy Week because from my point of view, that was something that just other churches did. I don't remember the church ever really talking about it. We definitely didn't celebrate it. And so the April 2023 General Conference kind of took me by surprise. They were talking a lot about the importance of Easter, how Easter is more important to us than Christmas, that there would be no Christmas if it wasn't for Easter. But then also they started talking about Palm Sunday and Holy Week. And since that time, they just keep promoting it to where now we're going to have 1 hour sacrament for Palm Sunday. So this is this is so interesting. And it makes me wonder, what's the church going to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Because I don't know. And I'm assuming that this has to do with revelation. And we've talked about the different reasons that this may be happening. It feels like the church is positioning itself in such a way that when there's a large influx of new converts, probably mostly from other Christian churches, the church is going to feel more familiar to them. There's been much, much, much more emphasis on Christ in so many ways, including emphasizing the full name of the church. When you go to the temple, instead of welcome to the temple, it's welcome to the house of the Lord. The new church symbol, and so on and so forth. And I feel like this is one of those things. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Okay, so I want to read a little bit from this article. This is by Scott Taylor. The First Presidency of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has announced that on Palm Sunday this year, March 29th, local congregations will hold a 1 hour sacrament meeting rather than the usual 2 hour meeting block. The exception is if a state conference has already been scheduled for that weekend. In a Thursday, January 22nd letter to local leaders about celebrating the Easter season, the First Presidency acknowledged that Palm Sunday, Easter, and the church's general conference are, quote unquote, wonderful opportunities to commemorate the Savior's atonement and resurrection through music and inspired messages. This year, Easter Sunday, April 5th, falls on the same Sunday as the final day of the church's semi-annual general conference. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. So as I started thinking about this video, I thought about other videos that I've made before and how we've noticed that when President Nelson was still alive and as president of the church, he had this painting of, that first Palm Sunday behind his desk. So again, I don't know why exactly. There could be many reasons. One thing that I think about is that it seems like that Palm Sunday was pointing to the future and pointing to the millennium. This was a time when Christ entered Jerusalem and he was recognized as Messiah and King. It was a very kingly type of appearance. And so when Christ comes at the second coming, he is going to be king and everyone's going to recognize it. So I feel like there's a second coming connection there. I don't know if that's why President Nelson had that behind his desk, but it kind of makes sense to me. Another thing that I just realized as I was preparing this video is the way that this dispensation began. It began with the first vision in the Sacred Grove just outside Palmyra, New York. And in the April 2020 General Conference, there was a big celebration of the 200-year anniversary of the first vision. Well, as we're talking about palms and Palm Sunday, I realized, wow, okay, Palmyra. I wonder if that's derived from palm trees. And so I looked it up, and so the name of the city, Palmyra, is actually Tadmor. There's also some variations here, like Taadmir and stuff like that. And then it says, the standard interpretation, supported by Albert Schultens, connects it to the Semitic word for the date palm, tamar, thus referring to the palm trees that surrounded the city. Later on, changed to Palmyra by the influence of the Latin word palma, date palm, in reference to the city's palm trees. Then the name reached its final form, Palmyra. So, yeah, Palmyra is derived from palm trees. And so, again, we think about the second coming, and the way that we're preparing for the second coming is this last dispensation and the work that needs to be done therein. And Christ came, he came to the world, his first appearance of the second coming at the first vision, just outside a city called Palmyra, New York, palms. So it's kind of interesting. I added that as an observation on my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. I'm starting to add not just quotes, but my own observations. But I want to go over what I have so far for Palm Sunday. And I've added a couple of things, including this from President Nelson. You can find this on YouTube or social media. It was one of those YouTube videos that he recorded. And we're going to read the transcript from the Caribbean section of the church website. It has the transcript of that video message. Let me zoom in. Oh my gosh. Here we go. Remembering the palms of his hands. On this Palm Sunday, I invite you to make this coming week truly holy, not just by remembering the palms that were waved to honor the entrance of Jesus into Jerusalem, but by remembering the palms of his hands. And he puts palms in italics. According to Isaiah, the Savior promised that he will never forget you, saying, "Behold, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hands." Such scriptures teach much about the mission and ministry of the Lord. Now, at this point, I had the question, in other languages, is it similar to English where in English, the word palm can be used for like that part of your hand as well as palm trees? Is that just an English thing, or is it something similar in other languages? I'm not able to do like an exhaustive research into that, so I just asked Grok, and it said more or less with a lot of Indo-European languages, yes. Not all, but you have French, Spanish, Portuguese, not German so much, but let's see. Anyway, not all of them, not Russian, not Hebrew, but in some languages. But whatever the case, President Nelson said that it works in English, and it's interesting how that works out. Okay, so I added that as a new quote on Quotes A through Z, and then I added the next one from Elder Ronald A. Rasband. This is the April 2023 General Conference where there was suddenly all this emphasis on Palm Sunday. He said, "Today, as has been said, we join with Christians around the world to honor Jesus Christ on this Palm Sunday. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Palm Sunday marked the beginning of the last week of the mortal ministry of Jesus Christ. It was the most important week in human history. What began with the heralding of Jesus as the promised Messiah," which, again, I just want to draw this, I think, potential foreshadowing of the second coming when we herald him as the Messiah and as King of Earth when he comes again. It just makes me think of that. What began with the heralding of Jesus as the promised Messiah in his triumphant entry into Jerusalem closed with his crucifixion and resurrection. By divine design, his atoning sacrifice concluded his mortal ministry, making it possible for us to live with our Heavenly Father for eternity. All right, and then let's go to my next one. I just have 2 left. Now, this one is really interesting to me. We're just going to read it from the spreadsheet. This is Elder Garrett W. Gong of the Quorum of the 12. The April 2025 General Conference, Eternity's Great Gifts, Jesus Christ, Atonement, Resurrection, Restoration. Each Easter spring season testifies that spiritual sequence and convergence are both part of the divine pattern of atonement, resurrection, and restoration through Jesus Christ. This sacred and symbolic convergence comes not by accident or coincidence. Now, again, for me, and also my friend Jen with Christian Fire Poppy, and I'm sure also to Caitlin with Anticipating Christ's Return and others, this is significant because we talk a lot about special days, especially when certain days converge. So, for example, General Conference and Easter. In this case, Palm Sunday and Easter and things like that. Also, we look at the Hebrew holidays, and I feel like there's significance there sometimes. Okay, so he says, Palm Sunday, Holy Week, and Easter celebrate Christ's atonement and resurrection. As today, every April 6th, we commemorate the establishment and organization of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This restoration is a reason we gather the first Sunday each April in General Conference. And then we're going to look at footnote number 2. It says, the sacred anniversaries that occur each Easter season sometimes exactly coincide. For example, Easter and General Conference occur on the same Sunday in 2026 and 2029. So he's highlighting that for us. This upcoming General Conference, we're going to have Easter and the Sunday of General Conference coincide. Palm Sunday and General Conference occur on the same Sunday in 2031 and 2034. Passover occurs near to Easter and during General Conference in 2026 and 2029. Regardless of whether or not these anniversaries coincide exactly, we understand that their convergent proximity is not by coincidence or accident. It is sacred and symbolic. Now, because I'm an LDS Second Coming YouTube channel and I'm crazy like this, I have a spreadsheet for special days. This is called Timeline Special Days. It tracks a lot of different things. We're going to be looking at 2026. It's this row right here. So this is what we have going on. The Saturday and Sunday of General Conference is going to be the 3rd and 4th day of Passover week, otherwise known as Pesach. So General Conference is going to coincide with Pesach. And on the Christian calendar, the Western calendar, Easter is going to fall on the Sunday of General Conference. We're not going to see that again until 2037. Okay, 2037 for Sunday of General Conference. We're going to skip over here to the right. This is a year when Easter and first fruits on the Hebrew calendar do not coincide. They do sometimes, but not all the time. The next time that's going to happen is 2029. And then as we're looking at the Jewish concept of Shemitah years, or the how basically they look at each year kind of like a day of the week. And this year, at least for the most part of it until September, we're in the Wednesday of years. And I've wondered if when we get to the next Shemitah or Sabbath day, if something might happen. That's going to be in 2029. It's basically going to be from like September or October of 2028 until the same time of 2029. Okay. Palm Sunday. let's see. So Palm Sunday this year, March 29th. Um, I don't have it coinciding with anything, but now we're going to have just 1 hour sacrament. So that's interesting. And then April 6th is also going to fall during Passover week. It's going to happen on the 5th day of Passover, Pesach 5. And then the last thing to point out is this whole thing that has to do with the Joseph Smith Jubilee years. If you're new to the channel, just really quick, I don't know much about this because it doesn't seem like much was written about it. But during the 7th year of the church, which was 1836, so it was established 1830, and then 7 years later, that's the first year. The second year is 1831, and so on. When you get to 1836, that's the 7th year. Joseph Smith said that was a Jubilee year. And he said that in conjunction with the dedication of the Kirtland Temple. And it's not a Jubilee in the same way that is described in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, it was every 50 years. You'd have 49 years, and then the 50th year would be the Jubilee. This is something different. And as far as I know, it's not something that we officially do as a church anymore, but he declared a Jubilee year in 1836. And then he did it again in 1843. It's recorded here in his journal, and then Wilford Woodruff recorded it in his journal. And it looks like the way that it's supposed to happen is that the Jubilee begins on April 6th. Okay, April 6th. And then it goes, I guess, until the next April 6th, the following year. So if that pattern had continued, that's what I have here in the green. If that had continued, if we fast forward to now, this is what we see. I think it's interesting to note there was the 2017 eclipse in 2017, and the next year you had the 27th Joseph Smith Jubilee during President Nelson's first year as president of the church. Although President Nelson became president of the church in January of that year, so that was before the Jubilee year started in April, but it was President Nelson's first year as president of the church. And then in 2024, we had the 2024 eclipse. These are the two great American eclipses that went from coast to coast and went over the church sites. And then the following year, 2025, we had the 28th Joseph Smith Jubilee. And it was during the Jubilee year that President Oaks became president of the church, because he became president of the church on October 14th. And we're still in that Jubilee year. It goes until April 6th of this year, 2026. So that's just something to think about. I don't have any guarantees that anything's going to happen. Something may have already happened in the changing of the guard from President Nelson to President Oaks. We don't know when the second coming is going to happen. We don't know everything that President Oaks is going to do. Maybe he'll be the prophet of the second coming, or maybe he'll do something major. Maybe not, but that's the only thing I can really point to, is that during this Jubilee year, President Oaks became president of the church. So I don't know. But we have Elder Gong, who, let's go back here and look at that again. We have Elder Gong, who pointed out that Easter is going to be during the Sunday of the April 2026 General Conference. He specifically pointed that out. And I don't know. Maybe something special will happen. Maybe it won't. Maybe he's just saying in general terms, that it's not by accident. I don't know. But he pointed it out. And then the last thing that I wanted to read, this comes from the church website. This is the United States Central area that I'm in Missouri. And this is just like another way that the church has emphasized Christmas and Easter, but especially Easter. I don't know if this has been said in other places outside of this area, but it says, This season, we begin a journey that does not end on December 25th. We remember his birth. Light of the World is an opportunity to share with family and friends the glad tidings of the gospel this Christmas, then move with purpose toward his resurrection. From Christmas to Easter, we invite you to remember him, not only in our holiday traditions, but in daily discipleship, personal devotion, service, gratitude, and love. Christmas and Easter are connected, and we invite you to intentionally remember him throughout the coming months. Our hope is that this inspires each of us to let his light stay alive in our lives long after the tree is taken down. Because he was born and because he lives, we can live with hope, with purpose, and with joy every day. So I would appreciate your thoughts on all of this. I know that a lot of you have shared it with me in the past, but what do you think about this? I never would have guessed that we would do 1 hour church for Palm Sunday. When they introduced that for Easter, I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Christmas and Easter. But Palm Sunday, do you have any other insights? Have you observed anything else about this? Put it in the comments below. But that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.